Hey, Ann Claire.
Hi, Meg.
How are you today?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing smashingly.
I think we're being awkward because we just said we can't chat too much at the beginning of the video. And both of us are like, what are we going to say?
I was like, I'll just use a cool adjective and that will be entertaining enough.
Well, you know what? That's fabulous. So what are we talking about today?
So today we're going to do a new thing, which is we're going to pick a common eating disorder thought, and we're going to use all the tools that we teach as coaches, or most of the tools, to challenge that thought. And this all derives from a concept we call dialoguing, which is essentially thinking about what the eating disorder self says and using your healthy self to challenge that voice in like a dialogue style. So we're not going to do a whole dialogue, but we're just challenging the voice right now, the ED voice. Did I explain that okay?
I think so. I mean, if anyone is very confused as to what is an eating disorder self, what is a healthy self, it doesn't really matter how you call them. Like Mick just said, it's more so about the idea of, think of what your eating disorder typically comments on or tells you you can or cannot do, or what you should do. All the, beliefs, thoughts, judgments that it holds. Let's package that all up together. And that's what we're challenging. And this is basically based on the concept of we all spend most of our days narrating life. So you're talking to yourself most of the time, which is pretty normal. We just comment on what's going on around us. Our eating disorder does the same thing, but that isn't who you are. That is a part of your mind currently. And that part of your mind gets to be challenged. So we just wanted to do this as a fun little challenge and to help you out because, like Meg just said, this is typically something that we do with clients. Now, we might not, give as much as what we're going to do now. We sort of teach them to do it and then we challenge them on what they say and we sort of like guide them through it. But this is something that all of our clients practice on a regular basis. And we just wanted to share this with the world, basically, because the whole world is watching our videos.
Exactly. Millions of downloads. Millions.
Soon enough, it will be millions. But I think if we give it a try, that will make sense. Because what we're going to do is we're going to come up with thoughts. Well, today one and another day another one. And we're going to just basically give pieces that anyone could use to sort of start exploring and challenging that thought. So you'll get the hang of it without us sort of explaining more, I believe.
Fabulous. All right. So the first thought is carbs are bad for me. Eating disorder thought.
Diet culture is all.
Yeah, derived from diet culture, right? So.
And this is actually where you could already start. So let's start there.
Yeah.
We're calling out. Where does this even come from? Like, where have you picked that up? Who has taught you this? Wild guess, diet culture, random Instagrammer, auntie, parents, I don't know, school people, friends, television, magazines, probably a wide array of options here. But I do really enjoy making it clear what part of the thoughts that we spot in our own heads are actually not ours, but things that we've learned from around us. And this is typically one of those.
Yeah, so true. And sometimes when I work with clients and I'll be like, where did you pick up this thought or this rule? They'll be like, honestly, I read it in an article one time and I just stuck with it for the rest of my life. It's like, whoa, you are very at that time, which is very normal. And what ends up happening is people collect their little ED thoughts and rules from like a million conflicting sources. So their entire eating disorder is even like you'll see very arbitrary as well. Like, oh, I can have this and not this, and this is okay, but this isn't. And I collected this from.
Oh, yes. I love what you just said, because you said it's arbitrary.
Yeah, it's so
And
arbitrary.
because this is what we do. We pick and choose what it is that we read and what it is that we keep. And this is good and bad news, as in, unfortunately, we have such a thing called cognitive bias, where we're going to basically see and perceive things that confirm what we know or what we want to believe, and we'll disregard what doesn't. And in this case, in this very specific example, this means that I'm pretty certain there's a lot of sources out there that might point to something quite similar in thought than carbs are bad for you, and might definitely indicate that carbs are very much fantastic, fabulous, smashing. I can't remember the words that I used for you.
So you almost bring up another little tool here, which is finding evidence against the claim. So if the claim of the eating disorder is carbs are bad for you, you set the intention to find evidence that carbs are actually good for you to challenge that thought, which of course there are many benefits to having carbohydrates. The primary one I always think of is it's a major source of energy. So
I think it's number one source of energy for our body and our brain.
I was watching this survival show the other day because I'm obsessed with survival shows. And in the climate they were surviving in, they're all like foraging for food. Like they have barely anything. And they've only been eating plants and fat sources. And this guy was like desperately looking for a carbohydrate source because he's like, I have to rebuild my shelter and I need a carbohydrate for energy because right now I have nothing. And it just brought forward like everything we talk about carbs on a very like primitive level.
Yeah,
right.
Definitely. And I love how that's also linked to one of the ones that I think my clients hear the most is, who's qualified to have an opinion here? I think they hear me say that for nearly every single dialogue, because let's be real. We're talking about your eating disorder having a thought about carbs, or a random Instagrammer having an opinion about whether or not carbs are the devil. I'm going to take a wild guess and say that they're not qualified to have an opinion on the matter. However, someone like a specialized ED dietitian, right, might just be the most qualified person to have an opinion. And thus, in order to be actually honest with yourself, I would think that that's the person that you could go to and whose answer you could trust, whose opinion you could trust. And so I like to challenge the qualifications the different entities that have opinions have, and who you give more power to, who you give more importance to.
I love that. That's so true. I feel like we can't look at the eating disorder and be like, this is an authority here that we're listening to, right? Maybe it has been in the past, but it's definitely not qualified to speak on your recovery, right? And if that's what you're committed to do, then you should not be listening to an unqualified source, right? So interesting.
And beyond that, I love the wording that you just used, because it really goes to show, and it reminds me of how, your eating disorder will never have your recovery as a priority, because, your eating disorder is fighting for its survival. I am not saying that it's a mean entity or something that we need to get angry at, because eating disorders develop for a reason and they have functions, and they're often they try to make us feel safe, and they try to give us some version of control over the world around us, but they're not equipped, and they're costing us a pretty hefty price in terms of using the behaviors that they're suggesting that we use. So yeah, I just wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah. And I wanted to throw something on top of that. Everything's flowing so nicely today. When we are talking about all of these, like finding evidence against the claim, like looking for the qualified source, all of that, I know there are many of you who are like, well, I can find all the logical reasons and the practical reasons why carbs are good. And that just doesn't work for me. I don't care that my team suggests this. I hear that all the time. And sometimes these sorts of appeals don't pull on the heart of the matter, which is, I think, the final piece I want to share when it comes to challenging your thoughts is if those things aren't working for you, bring it back to the big picture and the emotional reasons why you want out of this eating disorder. So yeah, maybe you still think carbs are bad for you. Is believing in that going to get you towards recovery? So always bringing it back to the big picture of, is this aligned with my recovery? And also, if you're not even that connected to recovery, think about the things like tangential to that. So like having a better relationship with my spouse or my kids or feeling more purposeful in life. Like when you challenge that thought, you become closer to what you're really searching for. So I wanted to add that if those like practical things aren't really helping you at the moment.
I love that. And you just reminded me of how if you have a why or a visualization of what your recovered life looks like, that is awesome. Make sure that you make it as specific as you can, because this is where you might find the golden thread to pull on when you're stuck in a conversation about carbs, for example. But then when you think of recovered life, and in that you imagine that you can sleep in on the weekends and your little kid will bring you a little croissant in bed with a poorly made coffee, and you want to be able to smile and feel loved and, have a giggle and just enjoy, the bread and the coffee that they made. It sounds so simple, but this is where sometimes you find the pieces of your magic and why today that dream gets reflected in you challenging this rule and this thought. And if you don't have a big why and specific ideas, you still have the whole logic, evidence-seeking, qualification side of things. And don't forget that you can also always look at, if I don't know where I'm going, I can at least look back and look at what I've done so far and how that has helped me out. Mm-hmm. I don't think that I'm taking too wild of a guess to say that, this rule, for example, about carbs has been around for a while and that you might have followed it for a while and you've paid a certain price for it. Yeah. Are you okay with that price? Do you want to stay there? Do you want to stay stuck? So even if you don't know where you're going, you are probably able to know what you're walking away from when you're saying no to something. You can let that be enough too.
Yeah. Love that. Amazing, Anne-Claire. I think we've done a nice little sampling of what challenging an eating disorder thought could look like. So if you guys are afraid of carbs or think carbs are bad for you, definitely rewatch this or share this with people who think the same, because you can apply all of these techniques to other eating disorder thoughts.
Mm-hmm. And we will add in the description box a little link written by a fab dietitian telling us to challenge on carbs and why they're totally your friends. So just in case you're like, yes, but girls, you didn't tell us, why they're fine. The information is right there.
Also, the Recovery Collective doors are still open. So if you want to work with Anne-Claire and myself on a more personal level, face-to-face on Zoom Live, your opportunity is by joining the Recovery Collective. Membership doors are open, which means you have until February 1st to become a member, and then doors close again. So time's a ticking. We hope to meet you inside the community. All right.
See you soon.
See you soon. Bye.
Bye.